Thanks a lot, Kurt. I think we have the perfect title, The Atlantic, Our Shared Resource. I think this could be okay to be going on with. I'm also channeling the spirit of Robert Jan Smith today, which is something I haven't tried to do before, so you have to tell me if I'm going to do it in a Dutch way at the end of my short intervention. I'd like to say thank you very much to the organisers. I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of the room. You did a great job. And I also have had the reports and I've seen for myself this morning. I want to thank each and every one of the participants for the energy and the enthusiasm that you've brought to the proceedings. And I only hope that half of that energy is going into the project, because if it is, then we're sure of the success. Let me start with the context from my perspective. I mean, the context from a European angle is not a very happy one. You know, we are starting from an economic context, an economic crisis, in fact, which means that we have a political focus right now on recognizing that we have far too high unemployment, far too little investment, and we need to concentrate our efforts to produce more investment, more jobs, and get back on track in growth terms. And that's very much President Juncker's political mandate for this commission. So the high-level strategic context is like quite a poor one, and we want to be able to do much, much better in the future than we've been doing in the relatively recent past. So if we want to have more growth, more jobs, research absolutely is fundamental to that agenda. Research really underpins that strategic political objective that we have in Europe. And therefore, it's not by accident that we have so much investment targeted through Horizon 2020. It's now the world's largest research program, standing at 77 billion euro. This is an enormous number, and it's not an accident. It's strategic, right? But even if that number is like a huge number on anybody's scale, we need, as Europe, to get as much out of that investment as we possibly can. And in the Atlantic, this is a really good example, no? With all of the money in the world, unless we focus our efforts, unless we join our efforts, we won't get the results that our citizens expect us to get. And then there's another dimension. We are a growth and jobs-oriented region now, but we have an absolute understanding that sound growth is not possible without integrating the sustainability dimension. And nowhere is this more obvious than in the marine environment, right? It's obvious. So we are really determined in Europe to make sure that sustainable growth and a sustainable environment do go hand in hand. This is also an underpinning strategic dimension, which is not for discussion. And of course, once we have that strategic focus, research is so crucial. So research underpins and data underpins any sustainability-driven policy agenda. And then my commissioner pointed to his wish also to have another dimension developed over the next few years, which is to start talking about strengthening global ocean governance. This is a dimension that we haven't focused on historically. We don't have good enough global ocean governance, and we all need to be looking at how we can improve that. That's an agenda that certainly the EU intends to be putting its political resources into very much in the life of this commission. So I think in the future, we will be talking about ocean partnerships that do go beyond research into other realms of cooperation, in terms of policy, for example, and I think in terms of setting the rules of the game legally as well. So this is a very good strategic orientation, I think. The Galway statement was ahead of that time. I mean, it fits in perfectly, and it was invented 2 years before. I mean, that is extremely, extremely effective piece of anticipation on behalf of the parents of the Galway statement, I think. What we are doing from an outsider perspective looks like a no-brainer, no? I mean, to have research, common research into how the Atlantic is behaving and how we can then use the Atlantic, use the potential of the Atlantic for the benefit of a growing planetary population, it's obvious that it needs cooperation east to west, north and south, for everybody to collaborate. It's obvious. It's just very simple, a simple basic truth. And then in terms of politics and in terms of finance, it's obvious that it makes no sense for European laboratories to investigate, for example, the geology of the Atlantic seafloor or the circulation of the water above it or the sea life that it supports in a separate way from the American cousins, from the Canadian cousins, or anybody else, and vice versa as well. It's really fairly obvious. So the fact that we go beyond the talking about that now, identifying the simple truth of that, to actually doing something about it, and that we are actually now beginning to celebrate real joint work, is a huge and significant achievement. It's quite possibly a game changer that goes beyond the participants in this room, no? And I'd like to really express my admiration, my personal admiration for everybody who has made this very significant first step possible. And of course, in the future, we are going to be focusing on the results of the collaboration, but just let's take this moment to actually understand how significant this first step has been. And I think it's going to be the first in terms of many subsequent steps that will be going towards the simple truth direction that we all identify as necessary. So we are going to be looking for you, for your results with enormous interest. We need to optimize our exploration and research efforts because we need to accelerate those results. We want to create the jobs and growth. We want to accelerate the usable results, and this is what this is about. Let me say a couple of things about communication. The importance of communication. It's really, really important that we continue to have communication as a huge strategic dimension of this project. And at one level, I want to stress the importance of early communication of results as they emerge or as they may be seen to begin to emerge. The blue economy is developing quite fast now, actually, but we want it to develop faster. So we shouldn't make industry wait until the projects have finished, and we shouldn't expect people either, normal people, to trawl through long reports on obscure scientific websites looking for new ideas, right? So we need to build in a communication reflex from the very beginning of this. We need to be looking for the potential market interest. We need to be looking to facilitate real transparency of the work so that we can get the acceleration of the translation of these results into new products, new services, and jobs and growth. And we also need to be making sure that this policy linkage is going to happen. That was emphasized very nicely by the previous panel. So what does that mean? We need this research and policy people to be talking to each other as early as possible and continuously, no? Because this is a two-way track. Let me give you the example, two personal examples for me. One is the collaboration I have with Anne-Christine here, in my neighbor. I need to know what she and her scientists can deliver before I can make proposals to my commissioner about what he can propose to legislate. It's not an abstract, it's a sequence, actually. And in terms of her targeting her work and her scientific world's work, she needs to know what's my shopping list in terms of wish list. And we have regular contact like that, and it's very productive two ways, I think, Anne-Christine. So this is, for example, now tracking the relatively simple, even simplistic way that we legislate for fish in Europe, from a single species approach to mixed species approach to ecosystem approach to oceans approach. So we're on that trajectory, And unless we have continuous dialogue, we won't optimize our mutual results. And the second example I live quite a lot now, is marine energy. We need in Europe, and I think in other parts of the world, to accelerate the development of our new marine energy industries. So to harness the power of the waves and the tides, in simple terms, but there's other things as well, like desalinity gradients. It has these potential future technologies have huge economic implication potential in the medium term. We need to accelerate this. So, of course, the policy and the research people need to be discussing all the time so as to optimize mutual work. But I also take from this last session the importance of dialogue between policymakers, and that links back through to ocean governance again. So these are truly global challenges. It's not a European challenge. It's not just for the US either. It's not just for Canada. It is for everybody. So it's blindingly obvious that we can achieve more together than we can separately. And so I'm very excited that we're already talking about extending the initial partnership. So for me, with political willingness and the necessary commitment and resources, it should, of course, be possible for the interested South Atlantic countries, South Africa and Brazil in the first instance, to join the alliance. I think both commissioners that are involved in this area, or the two main commissioners that are involved in this area, are very enthusiastic about exploring that possibility. Let's see how we can do it, I would say. And the most important thing, though, is to build on the momentum that you have created so far. So the projects that have been established under Horizon 2020 and in North America to actually put the meat on the bones of the Galway process now, they will move ahead quickly. I hope they will. This is what we want you to do, because we want the results, and we want the results to be widely shared and discussed between the researchers and, as I said, more widely, with the industry, with the policymakers, and communicated in an understandable way to society as a whole. So the societal relevance thing links back to the communication efforts of the results of the projects as well. I think if we want to have continued enormous investment provided by the public purse, this is also a positive feedback loop that we have a duty to actually deliver. So, you know, for me, it's very clear that the spirit of Galway is continuing to shine very brightly. I think Peter always said that the stars were well aligned. I think those stars are still aligned. There's a sort of frozen planet dimension here. The stars are still aligned on the Galway process, and long may it stay like that. So what do we do next? I think we in the Commission will continue to monitor the projects, obviously. These are the ones funded by Horizon 2020, and indeed, hopefully, bringing in the material from the projects that the Member States are doing bilaterally in cooperation as well. We will make sure that the knowledge that's created is going to be used to help us make the vision of Galway a reality. You've given us a lot of food for thought, so we will process that. We will basically continue to facilitate more initiatives and projects working together. And we will pick up on any links that we have learned about in the last couple of days, those that we didn't even imagine were there, I think, before. We will put all of the presentations online, and then we will also look to the possibility to organize more tailored events, if this should be useful, on an ad hoc or regular basis. If anybody wants us to organize something specific, you ask Siggy, and she will do it. So it's very straightforward. I want to make a promise to Ricardo. This is on behalf of Robert Jan, so he will have to agree with me ex post. I want to promise to continue to loop the European Parliament into the ongoing work. And in return, Ricardo, you and your colleagues have to continue to give us enormous support on an unconditional basis. Okay? So there's an enormous amount to be done. But I just want to underline the very favourable political climate. There's enormous political appetite for your work, enormous goodwill. You have the energy, you have the expertise, you've taken the first steps. So there's no reason why you're not going to take maximum advantage of this golden opportunity that's there now. And I'm 100% confident that you're going to do that. You're going to grasp the opportunity, you're going to deliver the results, and it's going to be fantastic. Thank you very much.